Let's configure some standard access control lists. Remember we were discussing access control lists, and there's standard and extended lists, and within each of those there are numbered and named versions of each, and we'll explain the differences in a minute. When we're discussing standard access lists and we're going to configure those on a network, remember that the standard lists are very simplistic. They don't have a lot of intelligence in there. They match on the source IP address only. So if I were to apply that somewhere, I want to make sure it's applied as close to the destination that I'm trying to control as possible. Because if I, for example, put in, if I'm trying to block PC1 from communicating to PC0, remember this was the 192.168.4 network and this was the 2 network. If I put an entry onto router 1 here that says deny 192.168.4.0, well, then that will prevent this network from getting anywhere, because it's going to hit router 1 and drop, and then I can't talk to either the 1 or the 4 network. So that completely kills everything. If I were to put it on router 2, well, then I'll be able to communicate everywhere except for once I hit router 2, where it'll say, oh, you're coming from 4 something, I'm going to drop you now. So when you start looking into extended lists coming up, that'll be the opposite. But for standard lists, put them as close to the destination as possible so that you don't block anything that's unintended. So what we'll do is we'll go into router 2 and we're going to make a basic numbered access list to begin. So we'll go into global config mode, and in global config mode is where we can create a numbered access list, and you do so simply by saying access list and then a number. And you have two sets of numbers, so you have a standard list and an extended list. So right now we want to do standard, so that will start from 1 to 99. We'll just start with 1. After you define the number, it's just, do you want to permit or deny the traffic? Now remember, there's a deny all that's at the bottom of each of these lists. It's not shown, but it's there. So what you can do is just permit the networks that you want to communicate to this router, and then just let the deny all take care of everything else. So that's what I'm going to do here. So what we'll do is permit, and I'll permit that 1 network so he can talk to here. And we're going to be using a wildcard mask. It's not a subnet mask, but the wildcard mask. And again, with the wildcard mask, you can make things a bit fancier depending on how you create your wildcard mask. The matching is different from a subnet mask, but for now I'm just going to do it as an inverse of the subnet mask. So we're going to permit the 1 network, and we will permit 3 network, which is at the bottom. And I'm also going to have to allow 10 because that was the connections between the routers here. These are talking egrep to each other, and because of that, I'm going to have to allow packets on the 10 network to show up, or else I'm going to lose my egrep routes. Okay, that should do it. Now for access lists, you can apply one access list, only one of any kind, standard, extended, named, numbered, one access list to each interface of every router for the inbound and outbound directions. So you can have 2 access lists on this side of the router, 2 access lists on this side of the router. For router 0, he's got 4 interfaces, so that would be 8 access lists you could have, in, out, in, out, in, out, in, out. That is the limitation of what you can do in iOS. So you can only have 2 access control lists per interface, and one has to be inbound and one has to be outbound. You don't have to define every single one, but that's your maximum. So I've created this access list, and I intend on putting it on this side, FA00, of router 2, and I'm going to make it the inbound direction, so that way the source address coming from 1 network and 3 network will work, but PC1 on 4 network will be blocked because of the deny all that's at the bottom of the list. So now that we've created our access list, we have to go into that interface. So I'm going to go into 00, and we are going to say IP access group and then the number, and we're going to define in or out for inbound packets or outbound packets. So I'm going to say in. Now it's been applied. So if I go back to exec mode and I show access lists, there's my access list configured, and this is a nice feature. It will tell you how many times a packet has matched a certain line item on an access list, so you know which ones are being utilized or not. So due to that egrep traffic going back and forth and whatnot, we already have some traffic showing up on that 10 dot network, so that's important that I allowed that. You'll see it keeps incrementing. So we can also show run, and we'll take a look at our interface. Okay, access group 1 is in, and then there's my access list 1. Now if I go to PC1, if I try to ping PC0 over at 2.2, there we go, we're not allowed. If we were to remove this, we go into interface 00, and I say no IP access group 1 in. Remember the negative aspect of no. You have to give it a second. Everything works. So that's working as intended. That's all there is to an access list. Now, for standard, for numbered lists, they're even more limited than named lists. So if you go with a numbered standard list, that is the most basic thing you can configure. And the numbered lists and extended are also more basic than named lists and extended. And I'll show the named ones in standard at least in a second here. But if we go back to here and we show our access lists, it'll say here's our access list and here's your entries. That's all well and good, but what happens when I need to add an entry in between these two? I need to insert something into these. I want to put something in between 1 and 3 here. I can't. So what you have to do is basically copy out that those commands, and it's easier if you do it from show run. So you copy that out. We spend a lot of time in Notepad. Paste it into here, and then we can add our additional entry. And then you'd have to paste that back in. That's how that goes. And you'd have to go and you'd actually have to go in and copy this, put no in front, blank out those entries, and then paste it back in. There's other tricks you can do, but I mean it's a lot of back and forth with a Notepad. With a named list, there's a bit nicer way of handling things, so that's what we're going to do now. So in order to create a named list, we do so with IP access list. So instead of doing access list, we do IP access list. So it's in a different area of the configuration hierarchy. We're going to tell it, is this a standard or an extended list? We're going to say, yep, it's a standard list, and then we give it a name. So we can either do a number or a name, but we're going to make a name. So I'll name it test. And if you see, the prompt has changed. So now it says you're in configuration prompt for standard network access list. So that's pretty nice. So what we want to do is now either permit or deny. And we also have this nice entry here for remark. So you can add comments to your access lists. So when you go back and need to diagnose things, you have an idea what it's doing. Not just based on the name, but you can say remark block some stuff, and that'll show up in there. So that's very nice. So what we'll do is duplicate that other access list, but in a named version. So we're going to say permit 192.168.1.0, and then before we press enter, we'll just check and make sure everything's okay. Good. All right, and then we'll do 3. When we go into extended, you'll see when you hit question mark. Right now it just says, oh yeah, you can do a character turn, and that's it. When we go into extended, that'll become more important because there's more things we can do at this point. So then we'll do permit 3, and we will permit 10 dot. There we go. And then of course there's the deny all at the bottom that's hidden. We're going to go into that interface again. So that was 0, 0. And we're going to apply that access group. So we're going to say IP access group, give it the name because we named this one, and we're going to say it's inbound. And then if we go back to PC1, we try to ping, look at that, we're getting blocked. Perfect. And then if we were to negate that and remove it from the interface, everything's back to normal. So that's the basics of those two types. One thing I want to show you though about a named access list if we show access lists, here's our two different kinds, and they are identical except for this interesting part here, 10, 20, 30. Why are there numbers in front of my entries? So what those are, they allow you, they're numbers, they're line numbers basically. If you ever did basic programming or something like that, you'll have line number 10, 20, 30, 40, similar idea. So what you can do is reorder and insert entries into these access lists that are named based on the number. So this makes it much more interesting to people. People often use the named ones because you have this greater management flexibility here. So what we can do is we'll go into there, and what I can say is give it a sequence number. So that's what that is. Those are sequence numbers. We can give it a sequence number and say put it in between one of these. So if we have 10 and 20, so I could say 15 permit, and then we'll permit a host of Google's DNS. Now if we show our access lists, you can see that got stuck in the middle there. So that's a great feature for named access lists in iOS. It makes your life much easier. You don't have to spend a lot of time in Notepad and saying no access list and then putting it back in and pasting. You can just insert things, and that all works out pretty nicely. So, and of course you can say no and then either give it a sequence number or the actual command. So if you want to remove any of these entries, you could say like no 15, and then if we show access list, it'll go away. If you want to get rid of an access list, you'll just say no IP access list, etc. You saw me take it off of an interface already, so if you're in an interface, you can just say no IP access group, whatever it is.